Hi, my name is Daniel Egusquiza. My pronouns are he, him. I identify as a man and as a Latino and as a Peruvian. Please do not call me Danielle. If you want to call me, with my Spanish sounding name, just call me Daniel. My family is from Lima, Peru. I speak English, Spanish. I can read a little bit of Italian. This is what looking bilingüe means to me.
¿Podría explicar la diferencia para tus padres en Lima versus en los Estados Unidos y cómo el idioma los afectó?
Mi papá era profesor universitario en Lima. Él trabajaba en una de las universidades más prestigiosas en Lima y era profesor de literatura. Mi papá es una de esas personas que si tú le preguntas acerca de cualquier cosa, ¿no? Y él te responde y es muy sabido, muy conocedor sobre cosas. Una de las personas que devora libros, ¿no? Y mi mamá, pues, ella tiene una maestría en educación especial y su undergraduate, su título universitario es en kinesiología. Entonces, ella trabajaba como maestra en una escuela para estudiantes con necesidades especiales en Lima. Y entonces venir acá, convalidar esos cursos y estar en una sociedad que muchas veces considera que si no hablas bien de una manera pristina, entonces pues no eres inteligente, ¿no?
Yeah.
Y entonces eso yo veo muchísimo, o sea, hay personas que, por ejemplo, en Reading, que son doctores en sus países, o sea, médicos,
Sí.
cirujanos y que aquí trabajan felizmente tienen sus negocios, ¿no? Y entonces tienen la suficiente capacidad y el suficiente conocimiento como para abrir negocios, pero no existe esa traducción para sentirse, pues, que uno vale aquí desde el comienzo, ¿no?
Sí, claro. Mi abuelo también trabajaba en computadoras y eso en Puerto Rico, trabajaba con IBM y cuando vino aquí estaba lavando platos en un restaurante. Y mira, con mucho orgullo yo hablo de él y lo recuerdo con tanto cariño, pero me sabe mal, ¿sabe? Me sabe mal que después de estudiar, después de hacer tanto trabajo que decidió venir al mainland para una mejor oportunidad para su familia en general, pero para él no tradució a eso.
Claro, y muchas veces, o sea, el que tú no sepas, el que tú tengas un dejo o el que tú tengas un, ¿cómo dicen? O que no sepas la palabra pristina o que digas lo que me pasa a mí de vez en cuando, que yo hablo a veces, trato de hablar tan rápido que a veces en lugar de decir he, digo she. A veces se me gasta el inglés, ¿no? Se me gasta tanto que lo uso. Y entonces, muchas veces, eso es considerado como una discapacidad, ¿no? O sea, como algo que va en contra tuya y no es simplemente que tú estás tratando de traducir tantas cosas en la cabeza o de hacer tantos procesos en la cabeza que de vez en cuando se te va. Y, o sea, hay personas, como vuelvo a repetir, que tienen muchísima más educación que yo, que son, o sea, superdotados en el idioma español, que aquí cuando vienen, pues los encuentras, como tú dices, ¿no? Lavando platos o que lo que están haciendo es sobrevivir, llevando dignidad a su familia, sacando adelante de su familia, que es una de las cosas mucho más importantes que simplemente hablar el inglés o dominar el inglés en una manera.
Can you give us an overview of the work that you do and the work that you've created? So I think that something that I love to celebrate, and maybe I'm biased because this is also my world, is that we wear many hats, right? So could you tell us a little bit about all the hats that you wear?
I think that all the hats can fit under this hat of community development creator. I work for the Reading Public Library. I am the community engagement supervisor there. Then I lead Barrio Alegria, which is a community engagement organization that utilizes the arts. And then I have I give my input onto a number of other projects like the South of Penn Task Force. I was in Reading Rising, and then I was recently elected to the Berks Arts Council Board, and I've been on the board of BCTV for 2 years. I am able to give my input into a lot of things, and I'm also able to connect people with resources in the community. I think that resumes like from a higher view. I think that's what I do. If we go down to a little bit more of the details, at the library, the work that I do at the library is I'm trying to recreate the library as a platform for neighbor-led programs. So not so much the librarian coming into work, driving and saying, okay, so you know what, I think this community needs this, or you know what would be cool for this community, this program. Instead is the librarian sitting with a bunch of community members and saying, okay, what works for you guys? And then the community members also feeling empowered to say, oh yeah, you know what, like we should do some traditional Mexican language classes, you know, not even Spanish, like, or some like tradition, you know, like bomba classes, you know, from Puerto Rico, or like, so that is a big shift because we usually are comfortable doing what we are comfortable doing. So for librarians, from the side of the library, being able to open up our spaces, and that brings a lot of being vulnerable, right? And also for the side of the neighbors, empowering neighbors to be able to give their input, and also to be able to explain their ideas, is the work. If the work is about empowering, then we need to figure out how to empower neighbors, and how to make sure that on the library side we are ready to deal with that messy process, and that takes time. You know,
that's what I was gonna say. It takes time, but it also, and I mean, in my work with libraries as well, but with community work, you know, and not everything is going to take off the way that you suspect that it's going to take off, at least in my experience. And some things that seem like a surefire hit, that this is gonna be perfect, everyone's gonna love it, both on the, you know, organizational side as well as the community side. And sometimes it hits in one side and on the other, or sometimes it doesn't either. So it's really interesting to see, you know, to find that, and to like kind of, at least in my experience, treat it as a process and kind of something that is always evolving. It's a breathing, living thing.
Absolutely.
And that's what I think community work is, and it's why I roll my eyes when people are like, I do community work, and I'm like, oh, okay, great, tell me about it. And then they start telling me about, you know, basically the formula that they use. And I'm like, there's no formula to this. Things are always changing. So
I was traveling to a state not long ago, and then I needed to get into a meeting, and so because of that, we stayed at a room at an Airbnb that was very close to a state university, because I thought, you know, like, okay, state university, they must have a library. So then the day of the meeting, the time of the meeting, I went to the university. I asked where the library was, and I went, and I found that the library was locked. And I looked inside, and there were people inside. So I started like knocking. I started like trying to move the door, and the people inside, they looked at me and they looked away. And that really triggers me. That like locked spaces that are supposed to be, you know, for the public. Like this was a public library. Like that really is like my bad signal. So at that moment, decided that I was going to break into this library. So I broke into this library, and when I did it, I was like, I'm going to write a blog. Like, this needs to be a story about why I am breaking into the library, and I am going to make sure that I make a stand. I draw my line in the sand about why there is no reason why we should be keeping people away from knowledge. You know, like we're like, this is America, people. Like, this is supposed to be like a place where if you need something and you are willing to take the step to go to the library, to go to a space that is supposed to give you the access, like that energy needs to be met with the same amount of energy. So with the same energy that I was going to the library, I should have been welcomed into the library, but instead I was like given this, like, they had a you know, like one of those key things for students. So this was a library that students were able to enter, but somebody from the community wasn't. And then of course I went into doing this research, because if it's a state library, that means that it's receiving state funding. So if it's receiving state funding, then it should be open to the community. So then I was like, no, I'm not going to let this go. Like, this cannot be, like, if it was a members only library, yeah, but like, this clearly wasn't. It wasn't that.
Is there a result? Is this like to be continued?
As soon as I finish it, and as soon as I write this blog, then I'm going to distribute it. I think I'm gonna send it to that library. After I finish it, I'm gonna send it to the library, and I am going to send it to their state representative, and I'm gonna say, hey, I didn't mention because I'm not mentioned the name of the library or the state, but I want you to know that this happened.
That's so Daniel, and I love it. You are such a wonderfully informed person that knows their stuff, does their research, you know, is very thoughtful in what I believe to be everything that you do. But apart from that, it makes me think that a story like this is exactly why you get called upon to be, I'm gonna be funny and say an informant. On behalf of La Comunidad. So can you tell us maybe the good and the bad of that?
I think that a lot of times the model that has worked until now is that in communities, there's an emergence of one person who says, I speak for this group of people. And it may be true. The issue is that to continue speaking for that group of people, you need to be on the ground, like constantly. You need to be talking to your people. And those processes of like talking to people, making sure that you are hearing not just one side of the story, but you're hearing the majority of sides of all of that process takes time. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of back and forth. It's a lot of missteps. It's a lot of messing up. It's a lot of you know, this person doesn't talk to me anymore because I spoke to this other one. There's a lot of that. When I get asked in those tables about you know, to speak for the Latino community, I often tell them I can only speak for my experience and for the people of, you know, that I am closest to, or that I have a connection to. I do tell them that I am part of the community, though, because for the longest time I was rejecting this notion that I could speak for a group of people, and then I later on I understood, like, I was making myself not be part of that group when I am part of it. Like, I live in Reading, my neighbors, you know, like, are really cool people. Like, I talk to them, like, we help each other. And then of course we have this community here at Barrio, and we have all of the, you know, like, the community of the community of the community. Like, I know people who know the people who know the people who know Val, and somehow the people know, say that they know me, even though, like, we've only, so we have to be, we have to be constantly getting that feedback so that I can speak about the person, like five people removed.
Right.
But I cannot say that I represent the community in writing, because that would be impossible for me to do with everything else that I do. The work that Barrio does is bring up, or try to help bring up those leaderships, those leaders. And perfect example of that is Kaylee or Val, or like those people. Those are Barrio people, and when I see them and I hear them like saying things like, oh yeah, like we want wealth, or we want this, like, oh yes, like it makes me really proud to know that they found a safe space that they can then take with themselves and create other safe spaces, the transformation.
And it's hard, and I appreciate your journey and your analyzing of the pros and cons. I know that it's something that you've gone through. I've gone through this. I know we've had this conversation a whole bunch. And it goes back to what we were saying earlier, that it's an evolving thing. And so understanding how we could be of service, but also cultivating the next group of leaders, helping other people also amplify their own voices, not just having it be about ourselves or about you or about, what you want, but also just keeping in mind everybody else that, is a part of that community. How do you think that the community can then better support you, the work that you do? ¿Cómo pueden apoyar las voces nuevas que están, que salen de barrio, que vienen de otro país, que llegan? ¿Cómo pueden amplificar esas voces?
Barrio looks at impact in three ways. First is the most superficial level, which would be the support for Barrio would be you attend the performances, you could come to the classes, the workshops, the events. That would be the easiest way for the community to support the work of Barrio. Mm. Underneath that, on a deeper level, give opportunities for people to work with more trained individuals or people that are more experienced. So I guess on that level in the community, if you have a skill, let's say that you are really good at acting, or you are really good at networking, or if you're really good at writing papers, writing resumes, all of that, then we could use you to pair up with a group of people that need that help. So there are opportunities for teaching workshops. There are opportunities for leading conversation circles. Like, for example, we do conversation circles with a group of ESL students.
Nice.
So that there's that level, but on a much deeper level is the transformation itself, is the individual level. And at that point, the way in which the community could impact or help Barrio would be by, and this is, of course, it's the deeper level because it's the most difficult one, would be to make a decision internally that Reading is your home. Then we stop throwing trash on the street. Then we actually start cleaning. Then we start greeting each other, because it's like, no, this is our home. Like when you have guests over to your house, you make sure that you clean up. You make sure that there's enough food. You make sure that you bring out the best stuff to give to your guests. And I think that it is possible for us to make that transformation on a much larger level. It's just going to take a little bit more time.
By joining a group like this, you don't feel like you have to jump into something and suddenly you're running around doing all these crazy things, but you can really sink into it in a very natural, organic way. And that's something that I love about Barrio Alegria, and I talk about it all the time to anybody that I can, is that it's just such an organic and meaningful way to connect with your community and those around you.
Yeah, and I think that Yeah, the most beautiful thing about Barrio is the people that are leading it. Um, I am a creator, so I gave birth to Barrio. I created Barrio, but there are other people that are nurturing Barrio, that are making sure that the promises that were made when we created Barrio are being kept.